Havoc.
News, interviews, and more.
We just reek of Huntsville Havoc hockey.
Welcome to another special edition of the Reekin Havoc podcast. I'm Tim Lambert. With this being the 4th of July, we're going to bring you what we call a Red, White, and Bruised episode, as players recount their memories of fights, injuries, and maybe other circumstances that might have left them a little banged up. We'll have a few reminders later on, too, as the Reekin Havoc podcast continues.
The Reekin Havoc podcast.
One of the worst feelings you can have is that of being stranded. Well, BT's towing, tire, and truck repair makes that a thing of the past, with 24/7 towing services and roadside assistance in the northern Alabama and southern Tennessee areas. But that's not all. They also offer truck and trailer repair, mobile welding, brake service and repair, new and used tires, and other major and minor repairs. Their name says it all, BT's Towing, Tire, and Truck Repair. For 24/7 response, call 497-8234. That's 497-8234. BT's Towing, Tire, and Truck Repair. Got something to say? Put it on a t-shirt, or hoodie, or apron, or even an iPhone case. Just go to daddyoscustomtees.com and make it happen. Look through their selection of ready-made designs, or make one of your own. Check out their special hockey designs, too. With Daddy O's Custom Tees, you can truly have it your way. Look for Daddy O's Custom Tees on Facebook, follow them on Twitter or Instagram, or go online to daddyoscustomtees.com. That's DADDYOS Custom TEES.com. Daddy O's Custom Tees. They've got your back or front.
Let's go in the slot.
Welcome back to our 4th of July Red, White, and Bruised episode. We've got a pack of stories to relive this week. So let's get to it.
Defenseman Charlie Risk.
It was my last year of juniors. We're in playoffs. My D partner, he just got back from a shoulder injury, and this guy was trying to fight him, but he obviously couldn't fight. He had a hurt shoulder. I kind of just grabbed the guy, and we just started throwing, and it was my first fight, and it was in playoffs, and it's probably the most significant one, I guess you could say. In juniors, if you fight, you just get kicked out for the game.
Former defenseman Scott Harf.
First ever fight, Chapin LeBlanc, he was tough, and he fought a decent amount. So I got tied up later in the game with him, and it was kind of like a nothing moment. But I come back to the bench, and Sam Canado was my D partner at the time, and he's like, "You should get your first one out of the way." Like, he told me that before the game. Like, get your first one out of the way early on, so it's not like nagging at you. And he's like, "Oh, you should have gone in there." I was like, "Sam, I think that guy's like he fights a lot." He's like, "Oh, no. Like, I fought him before. No big deal." I'm like, all right. So then it was very soon after they come to town, and I get tied up with Chapin again in the corner, and I'm like, "Let's go." And he's like, "All right." And I just get my clock cleaned, and I come back, and you feel good, like you finished your fight, like you got it out of the way. And that was my only one that year. I think I had a couple my next year, and I get back to the bench, and Sam's like, "Hey, why the heck you fight him? Like, he's tough." Like, I was like, "You told me to 2 weeks ago." He's like, "Oh yeah, I shouldn't have said that. So that was my first fight. I fought Tyler Barr, who was insanely tough. That didn't go well. And then I fought Sicard. It was like a weird tied up one. And then I had one other one against, I couldn't remember. It was a scrum off. Like, I hit someone, and then it was like a scrum of a bunch of guys. So I was not a particularly skilled fighter by any means.
Former Havoc defenseman Steve Howard.
I remember I got in a fight when I was in the OJ, and my general manager came down. Back then, if you got in a fight in the OJ, you got kicked out of the game. I'll never forget this. My grandmother had traveled with my parents to watch me play. I was playing in Durham, Ontario, which is 3.5, 4 hours from Flint. So you got to cross the border at Sarnia, and you got to go kind of straight north up by Owen Sound. First shift, kid comes down. It was one of their better players, so that's why I could justify it. You know, if you're going to get in a fight, at least take the guy off that's, you know, maybe plays the same amount of minutes. So it's one of their better players. He whacked me. I whacked him. We went in fighting. And I had the GM grab me in the locker room. He's like, "What are you doing?" I go, "Well, he whacked me, you know." And he said, "Well, that's not what we brought you here for. We need you out on the ice right now, and you're in here." So, and then I had to go up and sit down with my grandmother. I never forget. She put her hand on my shoulder, and she said, Oh, well, at least I get to hang out with you up here. Came to watch you play hockey, but I felt bad because they drove 3.5, 4 hours. You should watch me play, and I'm sitting up in the stands with her.
Former Havoc forward Justin Cedar.
I was on the forecheck, and basically, the long and short of it is I got my leg cut. I didn't know how severe it was, right? So I was on the forecheck. The puck moved out of the zone. I start heading out of the zone to go back check, and all of a sudden the ref, this linesman, looks at me and says, look, your leg. And I was like, what? I was like, what is he talking about? And I moved my pants, my socks and my pants on my leg. I moved them, and all of a sudden blood started squirting to this, like 12 feet in the air. Everybody was freaking out. And I just laid down at that point and kind of let the medics take over after that. And I think that was the first game of the season that year, too, in 2013. That was about a centimeter away from my femoral artery, which is one of your biggest arteries in your body. So that was the concern for that. But, thank God for paramedics and whatnot. They brought me to the hospital and stitched me up, and away you go. There's blood squirting everywhere, and they didn't know really what was going to happen. So they suspended the game, took me off on the stretcher. But we resumed the game later in the season that year against Peoria. I probably should have been out about 2 months, but I was out about 2 weeks. I was ready to get back, and as soon as I was stitched up and did some rehab for, I guess I shouldn't say it was 2 weeks. It was probably more like 4 weeks. So it was probably about a month instead of 2 months. So I came back a bit early, but I was ready to play.
Former defenseman Jason DeGarry.
There was a Fayetteville game when we had 6 fights, and I think the puck got dropped in the same face-off circle 6 times. And I think 3 seconds had come off the clock or something, and everybody lined up, line up again across from one guy. I know I moved I kicked out Carsey out of a face-off to line up against the guy that I had fought before. I'm playing defenseman lines up as a center to fight my guy, and then we just kept on going and going and going until they had enough, and we had a penalty box full of guys and go on to continue winning.
Havoc forward Cole Reginato.
In Birmingham, I had a good fight against a big fella. He was going after a couple of our players, and he hurt 2 guys, kind of dirty shots to the head. And that's kind of the ref's job to keep that stuff out of the game. But 2 dirty hits, I thought, that went uncalled. So I had a good fight against him, just said, hey, tired of you running around. Are you going to answer? And he said, yeah. So we fought, there's enough of that, and there's no more running around, kind of own each other's respect after that. In junior, I got traded to St. John's Sea Dogs, and I remember there was this player in the league, Matt Murphy. He's an older 20-year-old veteran player, great defenseman, one of the better players in the league, to be honest. I just remember kind of looking up to him when I was on Cape Breton and just kind of watching him, saying, I could really tell he's a pro and he's going to go somewhere. And then, 2 weeks later, we're on the same team, and we were down 2 goals against Bathurst. And he looked at me and said, hey, kid, I heard you can fight. Why don't you get us something, get us going? So I went up to their older 20-year-old tough guy and said, hey, man, can you give me a fight? And he kind of looked at me and said, who are you? I'm not going you. So I kind of just went after him. He wouldn't fight, but we got penalty, so we're in the box. And he's saying he's not fighting. So I was like, all right. I step out of the box, and their skilled Russian player was coming down, and I put my shoulder into him. He did a big backflip, and so he was right there. So it got him to fight me. So we fought. It was my first real tough guy opponent, and I did more than good. I think I might have won that tilt. And I went back to the bench, and all the boys were, it was my first game, and I was a young rookie. They were all loving it and tapped me on the back saying, thanks, bro. That was awesome. So that was kind of the start of that feeling of doing it for the team and seeing it pay out. Kind of felt nice, and those guys appreciating it. And yeah, it just kind of made me feel like home pretty quick.
Former athletic trainer Jason Lopez.
3 really significant cuts that I've been a part of with the Havoc, and then a 4th was actually a couple years ago helping a player with Birmingham. The first was my 2nd year in the league. Literally opening weekend, 2nd game, we get halfway through the 2nd period, and a skate comes up and cuts one of our players on the upper mid thigh, just yelling, J-Lo, 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 and seeing blood drip down on there. I don't know what's been cut. Is it just, hey, we cut a little bit of the soft tissue? Is it deep? Have we hit the femoral artery? Have we not hit an artery? Is it just bleeding because of your high heart rate from playing the game? That kind of stuff really gets me, focused and dialed in. I mean, we've had a player like a skate come up and clip a guy in the neck, and the Birmingham player a couple years ago, it was actually happened in Huntsville. It's like just a play, battling in front of the net, guys go down and the skate caught him, and it caught him up about around his jaw and had just a really nice laceration along the jawline, which, looking back in hindsight, can't say for sure, but just looking at where the cut was and where it could have been, that could have been a very bad situation because of the jugular vein being there. So that's the kind of stuff I'm always aware of and worried about.
Former Channel Cats tornado and Havoc right wing Chris George.
We were playing the Memphis River Kings, and Jonathan Dubois, who was my centerman, he got kind of cross-checked behind the play by one of the Memphis players. Patrick Clement is his name. You never forget. So I just, skated down and then, without even thinking, dropped my gloves and started trying to throw punches as many as I could because, this guy was a bigger, tougher guy and caught everybody off guard doing that because when you look at my career and my statistics, you notice my penalty minutes are not high. I was basically defending a teammate. So that was one. And the second one I can remember was we were playing the Macon Whoopie, and there was a little scrum behind the net, and I got kind of cheap shotted, and I threw an elbow that dropped a guy. Next thing I know, there's a little melee going on, and I'm getting jumped by two guys. And, that wasn't one of my proudest moments, but it happens.
Former center Cy Nutkovich.
Scott Trask was my roommate for 3 years there, and he's still one of my good friends. There was one time, I forget what the guy's name is, but he was on Mississippi. He was like 6'6" defenseman, and Scott was like fighting him at home near the corner of where the other team comes on the ice. And like we just saw him go to the ground, and Scott came up, and he was bleeding everywhere, and he had like a big like mouse like on his forehead, like a mountain. And we had a game the next day, so they stitched it up, but it was like so big the next day in Birmingham, it was like a golf ball, that J-Lo had to wrap his head like around with a bunch of gauze so that way he can put his helmet on top of the golf ball so he can play the game in Birmingham.
Former left wing Justin Fox.
Going back to that year that I came back and we went to the finals, we had a bit of a different experience in game 3 on the road to that finals. We lost a close game there. It was like 2-1 in Pensacola, and had a 6-hour bus trip home, and was wearing the defeat pretty hard. And the boys got on the bus, and instead of joyfully drinking, we were kind of depressingly drinking. And I might have been overserved by a teammate or two. Not going to name any names, but I was last off the bus. And at that time, was just kind of making my way down the steps. And I don't know if there was ice on the steps or what, even though it was late April, May. But took a spill off the steps of the bus, and did a full face plant, ended up with 5 stitches in my eyebrow and knocked out my front tooth. But if anybody asks me, I lost it fighting the toughest guy on the other team. Never lost a tooth from a puck, a high stick, anything. It was just, it was the bus. So I'm thankful they got a new bus there because, I blame the steps.
We'll be back with more of the Reekin Havoc podcast.
My name is Joel, and I came to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital in December of 1987 to be treated for osteosarcoma, which is bone cancer. We didn't know anything about St. Jude. We didn't know what they meant, or that, when we got here, what we would do, how it would be taken care of. And when we arrived, we found out that my family wasn't going to have to pay for any of my treatment, not for my medicine, not for travel, not for housing, not for food. St. Jude was going to cover all that. St. Jude supported me in every way, from, taking that financial burden off my parents to making sure that all of my family was included in this time. St. Jude literally means everything to me. I get to go home to my family tonight. I get to cook dinner for them. That's what you're giving. You are giving us everything by supporting St. Jude. So thank you so much.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
Hey, this is Stuart Steffen. You're listening to the Reekin Havoc podcast.
Havoc right wing Gio Procopio.
It takes a lot for me to get super angry. So for me to fight, it's almost like a last resort option. Like unless someone really, really takes me off or takes the liberties away from myself or my teammates, that's when I'll drop the gloves. But other than that, I like to stir the pot a little bit in the games. If it's being physical, hitting guys or getting in front of the net and just trying to take away the goalie's eyes or whatever, guys give me cross checks, I'll give it back. Or if there's a scrum, we played Fayetteville and Jack got hit pretty bad in the boards. Like we all jumped in as a team, and that's something that we really focus on. Just a we before me mentality, a pack mentality. If something happens during a game, we all come in and we make sure we protect our guys. That's something that's really important to me. I'm not going to go out of my way to start a fight, but if something comes up, something comes up.
Former forward Mike O'Sullivan.
I ended up hitting some guy and knocked him down, and after I started putting up numbers, DeGary's like, well, I think this guy's going to be sticking around. So DeGary always tried defending his teammates because that's what he was always doing. And I ended up hitting somebody, and the guy's skate came up and hit me in the nose, and my nose was a little bit blooded up. And DeGary came over and started punching that guy, thinking that guy did something. And I was like, oh, man. He's like, I got your back. Don't worry about it, man. Yeah, so, I would get in there, but I wouldn't be agitating. I wouldn't be trying to fight anybody because I usually know what that was going to turn into. Me getting beat up most of the time. But, yeah, I only got in a few fights, but nothing to write home about. We'll say that.
Former defenseman Nolan Kaiser.
It was really early in the year. We were on the penalty kill, and the puck kind of went low to high and east to west, and then the D-man was going to shoot. And so that was a good opportunity for me to kind of front the shot, which means like I'm getting in front of their player that's standing in front to try and block it. And Reggie also had the same idea, and the puck went off his skate and hit me in the face. There was no time to react. And I kind of immediately went down. After seeing the video, the puck hit me in the face and then bounced all the way out to the red line. So next time you ever pick up a hockey puck, imagine that thing hitting you in the top lip and kind of going about, 90 feet or so. Anyways, the first instinct, I could taste it right away. Like it was that kind of the blood taste in your mouth, and both my front teeth were pushed all the way back into the top of my mouth. And it was really frustrating for me because I had shoulder surgery a couple years prior, and then I got run into by a teammate in practice from behind and ended up breaking my nose and had to get nose surgery, had to get my teeth wired together. So there had been a lot of surgeries, a lot of kind of pretty bad injuries that had happened to me. So I was really frustrated. Right away, I was pissed off because I knew it was bad. And so we went back to the room there in the back where JLo would always set up, and kind of looked at me, and I was obviously bleeding really bad, but I could feel my teeth in the back of my mouth, so I knew that I'd probably lost them. It happened once where I actually got the one wired back together, so I was kind of hopeful that would be able to happen, but ended up having to get a tooth pulled at the rink there, the one that was really bad. And the doctor there, our normal dentist wasn't there, so we had a guy come in, and it was a really weird experience. Obviously, I'd never been under the gun like that from a dentist, just getting fixed up, but he was kind of really weird with Doc Markashevsky there, and JLo kind of bossed them around, like, what's going on here? And I'm so-and-so. He's like, what's your name? It's Nolan. Don't worry, Nolan, we're going to get you fixed up. And he probably asked me that 3 times, and it was really weird. But so then he gave me the countdown, 3, 2, and then he went ahead and pulled my tooth on 2. And then that's kind of when Doc Mark came in there. And before that, I once it kind of slowed the bleeding a little bit, I went and looked in the mirror, and it was honestly the worst thing I'd ever seen. Like, I had seen some bad injuries, and the one on myself was the worst I'd ever seen. So I didn't want anyone coming into the room, or even Britt. I didn't want her coming to see me at that time. So I ended up getting stitched up at the rink by Doc Mark. He did an unbelievable job. I show people the picture, and they kind of have to look at me again and say, wow, that he did that. And it wasn't like plastic surgery or anything like that. He did what he could with what he had and did an incredible job. And JLo was obviously there the whole time for me. And JLo and I spent a lot of time together, unfortunately. So recovering from shoulder surgery, and then I ended up getting a deviated septum, and I had to get nose surgery and couple concussions, and then I broke my hand at the end of my last year too. So that's kind of why I had to call it quits. So a lot of my family members, my mom and Britt, they were probably the most upset that I was done, because that was their weekends, is watching me play. Having no tooth for a while was I'd gone my whole life without losing a tooth, and then I finally lost one. It was kind of cool to not have a tooth for a little while, but then getting it replaced and seeing my new tooth, it just took a lot of time to get used to, because every day you brush your teeth and you see your teeth, and then you got a different one in your mouth and you're like, oh, I don't like that. And then the nose surgery one, actually, that's another story about J-Lo. He had never reset a broken nose before, and we were in the room and he said, well, would you mind if I tried to reset it? I've never done it before, and you're going to have to get it done anyway. And I said, sure. So laid down, and J-Lo tried to reset it as good as he could. And he did a pretty good job, but I had to go under for that surgery. So my last 3 years, I ended up having to go under for 4 surgeries. So that wasn't fun. And then going on the pain meds and stuff like that. So the mouth, the nose were really bad. My shoulder surgery after the nerve block wore off was really bad. Couldn't really do much and was in a sling for 2 months. And then concussions were really bad too. The one I had was, I didn't recover very well. It was probably a month and a half. And finally I was getting back to it. And then that's when I took my call up to Adirondack, which maybe wasn't the right move, but yeah, that's in the past anyway now. So I guess the mouth, the nose, shoulder, and then just my concussions. My broken hand, my last broken hand there, I actually got a surgery done at the hospital that was kind of the guinea pig. They ended up doing like a boxer's surgery on me instead of plates or pins, because I wanted to play. And I knew that it was my last year, so they ended up just putting a screw in my hand, and I was back within 3 weeks playing in the playoffs. So it just ended up taking over. My injuries, that was the worst part of playing, was recovering from that. And it was just hard on me and hard on Britt for having to look after me.
Havoc defenseman Dominic Procopio.
Just another game day, right? Early March, kind of gearing up for playoffs. I was really happy with the way we were playing and how I was playing, and just an ordinary game day. Obviously got hurt and pretty early in the game, and kind of changed the rest of the season for me. But it's hockey. These things happen. You can't fear them too much, because if you're worried about getting hurt, you usually do get hurt. And then, you just kind of got to roll with it. It happens. So you got to, what do we do from here kind of mentality. When I hit, I thought I broke my femur, because everything just went warm on the whole left side. So I moved my leg up, and I knew my knee was good and my femur was okay, but then I didn't see my foot. It was the one on the outside. So whatever, if anyone's listening that knows what's going on, there was that bone. And then it was the back little part of the ankle bone shattered, and then the deltoid ligament completely snapped. And then the initial shock and pain kind of set in. And then on the stretcher, it just kind of hit me, because all of my teammates, I kind of glanced over at them and they were all pretty distraught, and it kind of hit me, the severity of what just kind of happened. So in that moment, I was pretty worried. And then when I went down for the consultation for surgery, I was with Dr. Sabatini, and fantastic. And he just looked at the x-rays. He's like, you're fine. You'll be able to play. You're good.
Former Havoc forward Mike DeGurse.
I think my favorite fight was when I was playing for Winston-Salem, and Huntsville had a guy by the name of Craig Cox on their team. And he was a wily veteran coming on the downswing of his career, and I was just 20 years old coming into the pro ranks. And being a Detroit Red Wings fan, Craig Cox, when he played in the NHL, used to have some amazing fights with Bob Probert in the Joe Louis Arena. So when I played against Coxie, I asked him if he wanted to have one, and he blew me off for the first half of the year, and then in the playoffs, he finally dropped the gloves and gave me a little lesson there. So that was a fun fight, and I was pretty excited to be able to trade some shots with a legend like Craig Cox.
And there you have it for this week. We hope you enjoyed these 4th of July red, white, and bruised memories from current and former players. Keep it here for more of the Reekin Havoc podcast.
The Reekin Havoc podcast.
In June of 2005, our twin girls were delivered, Melissa and Ann Catherine, and they were born 14 weeks early.
Amy and Chris George talk about the Melissa George Neonatal Memorial Fund.
They both weighed less than 2 pounds. Ann Catherine was 115 and Melissa was 1'9". Melissa lived for a couple of hours, but all of the medical technology in the world just could not have saved her, and she passed away while she was in the NICU. Chris realized pretty early that that God had given us a platform that we could use to try to help people. So Chris and I started the Melissa George Neonatal Memorial Fund at Huntsville Hospital.
To know that Melissa's name is living on, her legacy continues, and I think that was very important to Amy and I, is why the fund is named after her. Because for 7 weeks, Melissa fought so that Aunt Catherine would have a chance to live. And I think that we wouldn't be doing her name any justice if we didn't carry on, because we know we wanted to honor her and honor her legacy. And the community, Huntsville Havoc, the community in Huntsville itself, they've rallied around that. And it's been a wonderful support system for us. And I think for a lot of families too, when they see total strangers that are giving.
We're online at HuntsvilleHospitalFoundation.org. Click on the Melissa George Neonatal Memorial Fund and you can give that way.
There's no donations too small, and every dollar is just as important as the next one. And if you're giving, then we understand you're giving because you care. And that's what's important, is that we've learned over the years that people give because they care.
And you can volunteer. If you're interested in that, you can click on the volunteer tab to fill out an application. We are grateful for any type of support, because we know that once we pull those dollars together, we can do big things.
For more information on the Melissa George Neonatal Memorial Fund, visit HuntsvilleHospitalFoundation.org.
Hey, this is Jeremy Gervais, and you're listening to the Reekin Havoc podcast.
Season tickets for next year are now on sale. Full, half, or quarter season plans as well as group tickets are available. Go to the menu at HuntsvilleHavoc.com and click on the Tickets tab. The Huntsville Havoc On Ice Youth Summer Camp is back. Session 2 is July 21st through 24th. Kids can learn from head coach Stu Steffen and assistant coach Tyler Piacentini. Cost is $350 for skaters and $300 for goalies for the 4 days. For more information, go to HuntsvilleHavoc.com/youth-camp. The Havoc Free Agent Showcase for all junior, college, and aspiring pro players will be held this year at the St. Peter's Recplex in a partnership with the Missouri State Ice Bears, August 1st through 3rd. Coaches Stu Steffen and Tyler Piacentini will be in attendance and inviting one player to the Havoc training camp. For more information, you can email ssteffen@huntsvillehavoc.com. Summer hours for the front office and team store are 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., Monday through Thursday.
The Reekin Havoc podcast is always looking for ways to improve. Do you have a talent you'd like to contribute to the podcast? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Email us at reekinhavoc@outlook.com and let's talk.
The Reekin Havoc podcast. For those returning from military service, the transition back to civilian life isn't always easy. Retired Marine Gunnery Sergeant Bill Cook talks about still serving veterans.
The mission of still serving veterans is to serve and honor veterans and their families by empowering them to build meaningful lives. And we do that through connecting to fulfilling careers, getting the benefits they deserve, or the services that they need. We have never charged anybody anything for our services. A group of business leaders in town felt there was a need to help the seriously wounded make that transition back into civilian life. Employment services, VA benefits, and connections to other community services. That's what we do. If you're a veteran and you need help, please get a hold of us. Go to that website, ssv.org, and you can find out pretty much anything you need to know about still serving veterans.
In Huntsville, call 256-883-7035. For tickets, official Huntsville Havoc merchandise, and more, go to HuntsvilleHavoc.com. Visit our website at ReekinHavoc.com. Look for us on Facebook, Instagram, X, and Threads. And listen, follow, and subscribe to the Reekin Havoc podcast on your favorite platform to keep up with the only weekly podcast covering the Huntsville Havoc, the Reekin Havoc podcast.